Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Steve Harney with the October edition of Keeping Current Matters. It's an interesting time in our industry right now. There's no question about that. As I'm recording this, the 10-year Treasury is just about to bounce off 5%. And of course, that's sent mortgage rates skyrocketing almost to 8%. So by the time you listen to this, we might still be in the high sevens. We might have dropped down a little bit, or we might be over 8. And obviously, any one of those scenarios will have an impact on the business. But right now, I want to concentrate on the things we can control. And one thing we can't control is where the mortgage rate is going to be. So let's really try to concentrate where are opportunities, because there's so much confusion in the market right now. Where do the opportunities actually exist? And remember, as we always say, keeping current matters. Most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening. Great agents can explain what's happening. So let me explain a couple of things to you and give you the charts and graphs so that you can explain it to whether it be a buyer or seller interested in purchasing right now. First off, I want to try to get rid of 3 myths that are in the marketplace right now that are confusing a lot of people. All right. Myth number 1, foreclosures are increasing. There are more and more headlines as more and more reports come out showing that foreclosures are increasing. And that's not wrong. That is true. Foreclosures are increasing. But what they're talking about in the headlines is they're up 100%, 187%. And what they're doing is they're comparing foreclosures today versus foreclosures 2 years ago, the bottom of the market, the foreclosure market. So obviously, yes, they're way above those. But to give you a visual explaining what I'm saying here, the red bars all the way to the right for the second half of 2022 and 2023 are definitely up over the what we call the unicorn years, the pandemic years, because there was a moratorium during the pandemic years. It was almost impossible to foreclose on a property, so very little. So even if there are a couple of foreclosures, and there's more than a couple, I'm not trying to dismiss that, but there's foreclosures in every market. You can see going all the way back to 2003. So we're not in a foreclosure crisis by any stretch of the imagination, even though percentage-wise, they're up over when there were very little or no foreclosures. So this is a slide, a visual that I would actually keep on my phones in case that comes up, because this kind of quells that fear, eliminates that objection. Well, I think the foreclosures are coming heavily into the market, because that's just not true. Another myth that's going around is that Airbnb is about to go out of business and they're going to crash the housing market because so many of those properties are coming onto the market. Well, that's not true. There was a myth, or there was a viral tweet that went out earlier this year that got a lot of recognition. Again, it went viral. And the author of that tweet actually got on television talking about the fact that Airbnbs were in a really bad space. It's not going to crash the market. They're not in that bad a space. It turned out that the data that he was using to explain the situation wasn't accurate. And the Airbnb situation is nowhere near as bad as what people were saying a couple of months back. However, I do think there's opportunities there. And we have to be aware of those opportunities, because just like I'm saying it's not going to crash the market, it doesn't mean it's not going to have an impact on the market. You know, we can't let the pendulum swing all the way back to there's no challenge whatsoever at all. Because I do think, again, there might be a challenge for some Airbnb owners. And again, that might be an opportunity for us. And it might be an opportunity to maybe get people to understand that jumping into a rental property, or instead of selling their property, renting their property if they're going to buy something else, might not be the best idea. And the reason I'm a little bit concerned about it is there was a Realtor.com and census-wide survey just recently done that showed that 59.8% of sellers who are selling their house would consider renting out their current house rather than sell it if they were to buy or rent another home in the future. That's 6 out of 10 are saying, yeah, I'd consider renting my house in the short-term rental. Approximately 20% said it would be great to have an extra income from a renter. And approximately 18% said the idea of owning a rental or investment property appeals to me. Ladies and gentlemen, there are people right now thinking about selling the house. They're going to say, you know what? I don't want to lose that 3% interest rate I have on this house, so I'm going to rent it instead. Now, if you've never been a landlord, being a landlord is a business. And you have to understand the business of being a landlord. Everybody wants to say they're a landlord. They want to have a tenant, that's bringing in extra money. They don't want that call at 3 o'clock in the morning saying the toilet's not working. They don't want that call that in the last storm, a tree came through and knocked the roof empty, or knocked the roof open, I should say. And the tenant is now refusing to pay rent because it's not livable. And nobody thinks about, that thing when they're saying, oh yeah, I want to be a landlord. That'd be cool. Well, there's a lot of business aspects of being a landlord they might not be taking into consideration. And if they're considering it Airbnb-ing it, which a lot of people do, I want you to understand that the Airbnb situation across the country is in a little bit of a flux. There are a lot of cities across the country that are saying, putting extra restrictions on Airbnbs, trying to curtail the amount and actually lessen the amount that are already in the city. For example, New York City came out, I think it was New York City Law 18, that really put major restrictions on Airbnbs. What was the impact of those restrictions? Well, this past June 4th, there were 22,500 short-term rental listings in New York City. Airbnbs, verbals, whatever the case may be. That number fell to 4,600 after the law was passed. That's unbelievable. That means there's about 17,000 people that were renting their house out as a short-term rental that no longer can. Now, of course, they can rent that as a long-term rental, but if their plan was to do it as a short-term rental and gain that extra income, because we know there's a lot of extra income there, or they were going to rent it out maybe 2 months of the summer and live there the other month of the summer, well, if they're going to rent it year-round, they can't do that. They can't live there 1 month of the summer. So it's putting a lot of people in flux, and I think that if we're talking to those people, we might be able to help them. Because maybe they have to downsize, maybe their summer place, or maybe they have to realize that, this is a time to cash in. Now, it's not just the cities that are saying, all right, fine, we're going to put major restrictions on. There are also cities that are doing the exact opposite, the flip side of this issue. For example, Phoenix. In 2016, the state of Arizona passed a law that bans all of its cities and towns from capping their number of short-term rentals. They went the other way. They say, you got as many short-term rentals as you want. An individual city, an individual municipality can't stop them, can't put a limit on it. At the start of 2023, Phoenix had over 20,000 short-term rental units. And all that competition has led to many of them sitting empty for weeks at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's big. Those are big numbers. So what we're seeing is in some cities around the country, they're restricting whether or not you can do an Airbnb. In other parts of the country, they're saying, no, go ahead, do whatever you want to do. And that's causing more and more people to put their house up there, meaning each house is making less money. And what is that? That's an opportunity. Because perhaps the owner of that Airbnb, instead of losing money and leaving it empty, has decided now's the time to cash in. Because you realize that those Airbnb, they're investors. Now, that brings us to the next myth I want to crush, and that's Wall Street is buying every home in America. More and more people are complaining that Wall Street are buying all the homes, and that's why there's no available inventory for first-time home buyers. But the point of the matter is, it's not Wall Street buying all those homes. And I know you've seen those headlines. You've seen those headlines in the Wall Street Journal. But the point of the matter, it's not true. If we look even at this year, all right, total purchases by size of investor. This is going through the second quarter of 2023. And they break it down. iBuyers, we know what an iBuyer is. They've really minimized, a lot of them are out of the business. They've minimized the amount of houses across the whole country they're purchasing. Then there are those investors that own more than 1,000 properties. These will be your institutional investors. Those are the people, the Wall Street investors. Well, they're not buying the dominant number of homes or the prominent number of homes on the market as investors. Then we go to the 100 to 999 properties, then the 10 to 99 properties. But the vast majority of investment properties being purchased, and if we look back on numbers, these numbers hold true for what the existing inventory of investment homes, what percentage are owned by mom and pops. Those are people who own 1 to 9 properties. They might own the house next door and the house around the block. They might own one home. They might own 3 homes. But the vast majority of investment properties are owned by someone like your neighbor. And if we take a look at that by percentages, we can really see it. About 25% of the homes in this country, a little less than 25%, are owned by investors. And the vast majority, just like they bought them in the last 6 months, the vast majority of that 25% are mom and pop investors. And I think that's going to increase to some degree to mom and pops, because John Burns Consultant just did a survey, and it showed that 7% of sellers who want to rent their home because of mortgage rates instead of selling it. So people that are buying a home, have a house to sell, or they live in a current house that they own, they're looking to buy a house, 7% have decided that they want to rent it instead of sell it. And we can see what those numbers are across the country. So what I want you to understand is there is an opportunity there. For those people that are thinking about it, we have to talk to them, whether it be an Airbnb or in this case, just doing it as a rental. And those people that have bought investment properties over the years. The vast majority of investment properties owned by someone like your neighbor. But this is what's happening to that market right now. Apartment construction is roaring along at a 40-year high. That means more choices for renters, likely at lower rents, as everyone jockeys for tenants. And that's already had an impact on a lot of rental owners. As a matter of fact, a survey just done by Billiam showed that 32% of rental owners plan to sell their properties in the next 2 years to come. 32, 1 out of 3 investors are saying, you know what, now's time to go ahead and get the house on the market. So I want to talk to you about that and what that opportunity is, and we'll go into that a little deeper in a second. But what that means to me is we're going to have more inventory. And I think it's already starting, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a quote from the senior economist at Zillow. What we didn't expect, especially considering 7+% mortgage rates, was more new listings. Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, we have active listings, which have been high for a couple of months now, and new listings keep on falling. And that's a seasonal pattern. But this last month that's recorded, the month of August, going from July to August, the September's numbers aren't in as of this recording. For the first time in 7 years that we have data for, the amount of new listings coming to the market increased, didn't decrease. There's a seasonality to new listings. And this time of year, they fall off. But this year, they didn't. Now, we have 7 years of data, but I've been in the business for over 35 years. And I can tell you, I can't think of a year in those 35 years. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 exceptions where new listings coming to the market increased in the summer. Didn't happen. It continues to decrease throughout the rest of the year. So we're really looking for that next number, because this could be a sign that people are ready to make the move. Now, who are those people ready to make the move? Well, we know about rate lock. We know that the vast majority of people have very low interest rates right now. As a matter of fact, 70.7% of all current mortgages are lower than 4%. And it's over 90% lower than 5%. And in a 7.5 environment, 7.5% mortgage environment, maybe even closer to 8 by the time you get this. All right. In that environment, none of these people want to sell because they don't want to buy another house and have to take a mortgage twice what they have, twice the percentage or rate that they have currently. But if we take a look at that and really analyze it, we'll know that, yeah, that's probably true. Anyone less than 3%, that's that blood red up in the upper right-hand quadrant, they're not selling. They're pretty, unless something real, there's a life event that makes them sell, they're not going to sell. If they have under a 4% mortgage rate, between 3 and 4, they're probably not going to sell. Between 4 and 5, they're going to have to think hard before selling. Now, if they have between 5 and a 6, in the 7s, they're probably going to sell. They're not going to let that hold them back. And obviously, if they're over 6%, they're probably going to go ahead and do it. However, If we take a look at the red and the blood red numbers, there's an exception there. And we have to be aware of the exceptions in any market in order to take advantage of the opportunities of those exceptions. And here it is. If we look to the left-hand side of this, we can see about 1 in 4 U.S. homeowners, 26%, say high mortgage rates would not impact their decision on when to sell their home. 1 out of 4 saying interest rates got nothing to do with whether or not I'm going to sell my house. We go to the right, of those 26%, 43% say it's because they would not need a mortgage to buy a new home. So there are 1 out of 4 that are saying mortgage rates got nothing to do with me selling my house, which came as a surprise to me. And of that 1 out of 4, 4 out of 10 are saying they don't even need a mortgage to buy another house. And then all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, whoa, I get what's happening here. And if we break down that 43%, this is what we realize. 35% are baby boomers. 23% are Gen X's. Then the numbers drop off. Why is that? Because the baby boomers and the Gen X have what? Plenty of equity. And let's take a look at that a little bit closer. This is the amount prices have gone up in the last 5 years in this country. If you look down at the bottom right, the bottom middle, nationally, the national average is 57.3% in 5 years. That means if someone had a $400,000 house 5 years ago, that house is worth $600,000 right now. So they have that extra $200,000 equity and whatever they paid off over that 5 years of their mortgage. Depending on how long a term mortgage would determine that. But if we go 30 years back to 1991, 32 years back, we can see that the national averages, prices went up almost 300%. So that means people that bought their house 30 years ago, they're sitting on a tremendous amount of equity. And those are the people that are saying, mortgage rates don't matter to me. I can go ahead and buy because I have enough equity. How much equity do they have? 38.7% of Americans today own their house free and clear. 30% have more than 50% equity, meaning if they own a $400,000 house, they have at least $200,000 in equity. And then you look all the way around the corner. Even if we go down to 0 to 9% equity, that's minimal equity, that's only less than 2% of the people in the country, homeowners in the country. And people are worried about negative equity, that's less than half of 1%. So there's plenty of equity in the country. As a matter of fact, CoreLogic in the latest equity report said quarterly gains added almost $13,900. The average U.S. homeowner now has about $290,000 in equity. Ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty, it's kind of amazing to me. Well, what does that mean? Well, people with major equity have 3 major advantages in the market. So we have to find those people and help those people understand their advantages. Number one, many will have the ability to be an all-cash buyer. They don't have to worry about the mortgage, like they said, because they're not taking a mortgage. If they have a lot of equity, they have the ability to give larger down payments. That means they'll get a more favorable interest rates, lower private mortgage insurance costs, ultimately reducing the overall cost of the mortgage. And ladies and gentlemen, number 3 is important. As Americans grow older, understand they're going to need more and more help in regard to assisted living residences. Everyone says, well, they want to age in place. They don't want to age in place if they own a 4-bedroom colonial and they have to walk up a flight of stairs to go to sleep every night. And if they wake up in the middle of the night because they have a little bit of a hunger pain, they want a snack, they don't want to walk down a flight of stairs to get a cookie and then walk up a flight of stairs to get back to bed. So they want to age in place, meaning they want to be in that market, perhaps, in that neighborhood, in that region, but it doesn't mean they want to live in that house. And as they get older, they're going to have other needs. And people with a lot of equity could make that move now. And you should get to learn more and more about that as the years go on, because that's going to be a growing piece of possible business. And the other thing I want to talk about is the grandparent wish to be with grandkids. We all know that there is no grandparent that trusts their children to raise their grandchildren. And that's a joke, but the reason it's funny is because it's somewhat true. Grandparents want to be very involved with their grandchildren. And I think that because of what took place during the pandemic, where they were separated from their grandchildren, if we remember back just a couple of years ago, older people were told not to go anywhere near their grandchildren, because the grandchildren at that time, they were said they can't be hurt by the virus, but they can get the virus. And then they could transfer it to a grandparent who could be seriously hurt because they had mitigating circumstances, I should say. So now that division that took place really wanted people to be closer together, forced people to be closer together. They realized how much they love their families. And we have to be on top of that. I like to call it the grandparent wish. And it's not something I made up in my head. According to Go Banking Rates, never underestimate the power of grandchildren, especially when it comes to lifestyle and financial decision. Recent data shows that many baby boomers are relocating further away from the home that they used to, so that they could be closer to their grandbabies. That's exactly what we're talking about. And let's break it down to numbers. 77% of all sellers have no children living at home when they sell their house. They're empty nesters. 77% have no children when they sell their home. 10% have one child. But if we concentrate on the 77, that means, all their children have grown up and gone out, and they're young adults with their own life now. And some of them are going to have children. And that's part of the reason that 77% sold. And they're not moving close by. Now, they talk about aging in place. If their family's there, they definitely want to age in place if they have friends. But here's an interesting thing. When we think about the grandfather ages between 55 and 74, that's the highest percentage of sellers who move at least 100 miles. People of grandfather age are the highest percentage by a lot of the people that are selling and moving more than 100 miles away. What my argument is, they're moving to be closer to family, closer to their grandchildren. Now, you might say, well, they might be moving to a retirement community. They might be moving down south where it's warmer weather. There's definitely some of that. But if you take a look at the surveys that are done, the number one reason is because they want to be moved closer to friends or family. The grandparent wish is real. Let's find those people. We know they have equity. We know they want to move. They want to be with their grandkids. Let's find those people and help them understand we can make that dream come true. As a matter of fact, as a member, you have access to the Professional Equity Assessment Report. We can put your logo, put your name and the client and everything there. It's a beautiful 6 or 7 page report that you can fill out and give them the equity. That should be a major part of your prospecting right now. Forget about offering a CMA. Almost no consumer knows what a CMA even is. And there are some realtors that don't even know what the letters stand for. What they're interested in is how much equity did they build up over the last couple of years. They know it's a lot, but they don't know how much. So if you prospect, whether you do it by phone, whether you do it by door-to-door, whether you do it by social media advertising, whether you do it by direct mail, whether you do it by email advertising or email contacts, offer them the ability to find out exactly how much equity they have in their house. And this report, which you can download right off the member site, will give you everything you need, including scripts and everything else, to help you with that. Now let's jump to current home price appreciation, because that's important. You're going to hear some talk later in this year about, well, is there a challenge with prices again? I want to kill that thinking right now. First of all, from the Wall Street Journal, home prices aren't falling anymore. The surprisingly quick recovery suggests that the residential real estate downturn is turning out to be shorter and shallower than many housing economists expected after mortgage rates soared last year. Remember all those projections that prices are going to fall 20%, 10%, 8%, 5%? Well, they fell for a little bit of time, and then they came right back again. From January through August, housing demand stabilized, resulting in relatively stable home prices. By August 2023, national resale home prices fully recovered from declines experienced in the second half of 2022 and now exceed the April 2022 peak. We had that fall off and they came back. According to Freddie Mac, overall, it appears the reduction in supply has outweighed the decrease in demand. Thus, housing prices have started to increase even as sales have fallen. And let's prove that with data, ladies and gentlemen. You know I love to prove things with data. Look at the Case-Shiller, the FHFA, and the CoreLogic report, which we give you every month, an updated version. What happened? Beginning of last year, prices appreciated way too high, way too much greater than they should have. There needed to be a correction on that, and there was, the red bars. And now appreciation is much more on the historical norm. So those are three indexes. Here's another three. They are all showing the same thing. As a matter of fact, the FHFA shows that in every single region of the country, prices are up. And if we go to Case-Shiller, every single of the 20 cities they cover, all 20 cities are up. And when people tell you, well, what about Los Angeles? What about Seattle? What about Phoenix? I hear Phoenix is getting killed. All of those cities are coming back, and each of them in the last month recorded is July, because there's a lag time with the Case-Shiller. We see that they're all up 1% in a month. So yes, prices are coming back even in the hardest situations. Now, there will be some cities that is the exception that make the rule. Austin's still getting hit pretty hard. New Orleans and southern Louisiana is still getting hit pretty hard. Boise, Idaho is getting hit pretty hard. But if you're not doing business in Boise, New Orleans, or Austin, you're doing pretty good. So let's not let some cities paint a picture, or let's not allow mass media to paint the picture that everything is a big challenge. Now, going forward, future home prices, really important. We understand what's happening. High mortgage rates have slowed additional price surges, which is a good thing, with monthly increases returning to regular seasonal averages. In other words, home prices are still growing, but in line with historical seasonal expectations. What does that mean? If we look back the last 49 years and we average it out, this is how much prices have gone up each month. So what we can see is the beginning of the year, prices go up higher, quicker. The appreciation accelerates as we're going into the prime buyer season. And then when we hit summer, the appreciation decelerates. We're not talking about depreciation. The bars would be red if we were talking about depreciation. No, appreciation decelerates. Now, by the end of this year, those bars are so close to zero, maybe one of them is going to slip to a red bar at the end of this year, but there's not going to be any big fall off in prices. But starting now, and we're already starting to see some headlines come out, people are going to misunderstand the deceleration of appreciation and say prices are falling. They're not falling. They're just not going up as fast as they did. An example I like to use, if you're driving along on flat land and all of a sudden you start to go up a mountain, if you keep your foot on the gas pedal at the same angle, you're going to go up that mountain slower. All right, because there's an incline. It's going to cause you to slow up. So you're still moving forward. You're just not going as fast as you were going forward. If we say depreciation, I'll be like, you jammed it in reverse and started going downhill in reverse. That's not taking place. Prices are still moving forward, just at a slower speed. And that's already happening, and that's good news. We didn't have the massive appreciation we had at the beginning of last year. But if we take a look, what we can see, we had a little extra appreciation, a little less appreciation at the beginning of the year, caught up for that in the, March, April, and May. But now we're getting back to normal numbers again. And some people are suggesting, nevertheless, home prices are still expected to re-accelerate and reach mid-single-digit growth rate by the end of the year, according to CoreLogic's latest home price index forecast. Some people are saying we still are going to be good. We're not going to go anywhere near the red. What we want to do is give you 6 of the year-end forecast that just came out. American Enterprise Institute, Zillow, Fannie Mae, the Home Price Expectation Service survey, which we'll talk about in a second, Mortgage Bankers Association, and NAR. NAR is the only one that is projecting the prices will be less at the end of this year than they were at the end of last year. Everyone else is seeing that prices are going to be going up. The average of all 6 of them is 3.3%. So what are we going to have this year? A little less than normal appreciation. And that's a good thing after 2 years of crazy appreciation. Prices are settling in, wages are going up. Both of those things have an impact on affordability. Nowhere near the impact that mortgage rates do. So mortgage rates have to moderate for affordability to really be impacted in a big way. But that's what we're hoping for as we move forward. Housing prices, the appreciation moderates to normal numbers. Wages continue to go up. And mortgage rates eventually moderate. When that's going to happen, no one knows, ladies and gentlemen. No one knows. Now, the Home Price Expectation Survey, which I just mentioned, is a nationwide panel of over 100 economists, real estate experts, and investment and market strategists. They project 5 years out. This is what they project for the next 5 years. Just like the average of those 6 others was 3.3%, they're looking at 3.32%, the 100 analysts that they survey. Next year, they think that's going to be a little less. Do I think that number is going to go up? Because I think they were a little negative. They adjusted the 2023 number up. I think eventually they're going to adjust the 2024 number up into the 3s. But we're not looking at crazy appreciation, but we're also not looking at any red bars. When people are saying prices are going to fall, some are going to say prices are going to crash. Well, no. That's not what people are. That's not what the surveys are showing. What the experts are saying. There might be 1 or 2 people saying, hey, listen, I think the world is coming apart. But the vast majority are saying, no, we're going to have steady, maybe a little bit below historic appreciation. And that's going to help in a very big way. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that we gave you a lot of information today. I hope you can use some of it. One of the biggest takeaways is that if we take a look even at this slide, if you were an investor, whether you were an Airbnb investor, whether you were a mom and pop investor that owned 3 or 4 homes that you rented year round, you made a fortune over the last couple of years. You're not going to make a fortune over the next couple of years. Maybe it's time to cash in. Let them see this chart along with the other charts I showed you, and let them make a decision. Maybe it's time for them to take some of that money out and start a business. Maybe it's time to sell some of those properties and help the kids with student debt. Maybe it's time to take out some of the money of that. And what's getting crushed right now in real estate? Commercial property. Maybe if they own 10 houses, they sell 5 of them and buy a small commercial building on Main Street. Instead of complaining about the challenges in the market right now, those challenges are creating opportunities. And instead of concentrating on the challenge, let's concentrate on the opportunities they're creating. And every week, every Monday, we do a Facebook Live where we go exactly at that. 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Pacific Time on the Keeping Current Matters Facebook page. As a member, jump in and we take one situation and we go deep on it. We spent a half hour just on that. We covered about 8 different situations in this monthly market review. There we'll take one of those and go really deep on it, so you have a real good understanding of it. Time allows us to do that. A half hour on just one subject, which the monthly market report, we're trying to give you all of the information. All right, thank you very, very much for your time today. You gave me a half hour of your life or thereabouts. I hope we gave you a tremendous return on that investment. That's what my hope is, definitely. And until the next time, remember, especially in a market like this, keeping current matters.